Yeah, so the idea behind the whole thing was because of the rarity of the liquid that is in this, because it's a one-off. It was originally called Uska Bear, which is like water of life instead of the only drop. But we were worried a bit about like the translations and the fact that it was going out as a global auction and stuff like that. So we refrained from doing that, and it was just called the only drop. But the idea was I could only add something to the bottle. So like because the bottle was the way it was, I couldn't resculpt the glass. It was how do we bring something to it that kind of elevates it, gives it this premium look and feel. I landed on this idea of this kind of ripple because it's the only drop. This idea of the liquid's the hero. What can we kind of do with that? So you'll see there on the kind of the bottle, the formation is basically this disc that's a kind of ripple on its side. And as part of the kind of storytelling behind it, it was really how do we take almost and celebrate the craft of like what goes into making a whiskey, like the time spent, all those aspects of it, and water's obviously at the heart of that as well. So it was like, how do we like reunite the whatever we're doing is this kind of casing. So like we got shavings from the original cask and put them into a paper pulp sculpture. So like the veining that looks kind of almost marble-esque that's on it there is actually just shavings from the original cask that it came in. So again, it was this idea of how do we take like the part that typically once it's out of the cask and it's in the bottle, they're never like reunite. It was how do we reunite that? So that was kind of part of this storytelling. It's like obviously during maturation, they're entwined, and that's what creates the flavour of the whiskey. And then it's sad that obviously one leaves, one goes in the bottle, and that's it. So it was sort of this wee celebration of reuniting them. And then in terms of like the decision to go with the paper pulp things, I had the company James Cropper had a secondary company called Colourform, and I'd went to one of their exhibitions and got some of their samples of some stuff they were doing. So when I had this idea of like encapsulating the bottle as this kind of sculptural thing, I contacted them. So when I started speaking to them, and it got to a point where I had done the sketches, done the mock-ups, and part of my product design background of like kind of measuring up how I think it would work and shaping the sizes and stuff. I'd taken it to a point where I couldn't take it any further in terms of like producing prototypes or producing how it would actually be made. So they put me in touch with a company, Matter, who are based down south, and they are a kind of product design house. So they do like prototyping, they do kind of small batch run stuff, both traditional and kind of do 3D printing and these sort of techniques. Once I was kind of collaborating with them, it was perfect because they were able to bring their technical expertise mixed with like, okay, we've got it like this, that won't work, what if we try this? And it was just this kind of back and forth on seeing how we could retain all of the elements that seemed features, but obviously make it work because it had to actually physically work. Because it's one thing going for a fancy looking render or a mock-up to actually having the physical thing. So once we kind of had that down and knew how it was going to work, and they were beginning to make the moulds and to sculpt that through, I was working on the bottle as well, obviously at this point, because parts of it need to align. So the front drop on the front of the paper pouch, the paper pulp, sorry, matches with a ripple that's on the bottle. Now, typically, if you were going to mould a bottle or have some form of decorative thing on it, you would do it in mould. So you would basically have these expensive moulds. You would have it cast, and then basically when the bottle gets blown, the glass gets blown, it would have that on it. But because I was stuck with the bottle I had, I wanted to have the idea that it looked as if it had that, like as if it had an emboss on it. So we worked with a company, I'll try to remember the name. Image on glass, up north, and it was about trying to say to them, how can we kind of do that? Is there a way where we can like almost like a spot UV like that you would do on paper, but is there a way of doing that to a bottle? So we worked at this way of doing like a high build varnish onto it that was like repeated till it got to a kind of certain height that almost looked like an emboss. And then that's when you take the sleeve off, you can see that's on the bottle, the kind of rings. The rest of it was just how do we bring foiling into it? So again, this idea of the copper. So again, that's done digitally onto the bottle, so you can see it for the age 33 years. And then yes, so that's direct to bottle rather than having a label. And again, the reason behind that was we wanted a lot of the light to come through the liquid and hero the liquid. And also, if you scroll up a wee bit, just on the back where there's a wee light hole that's left where the monogram is, just there. and that was to try and help the light cast from the back of the bottle to the front, so that the wee droplet on the front would light up. So like the light would actually fully transfer through it. So there was just lots of these wee things that you, when you're going through the process, it's like, right, okay, how do we refine that? How's that going to work? How's this going to work? And each thing almost posed like another problem that you were right, okay. So even try to get the alignment of the tolerances between the paper sculpture and the wee round bit on the monogram was a nightmare, because there's a tolerance between digitally printing to a bottle and then the fact there's flex in the paper, because obviously paper's it's not rigid, it's not rigid. So again, try to work that out, and then again finishing it off with a kind of white wax at the top, and then one of the nice wee additives was the messaging on the back about only 1 dram left. So I just figured, because it's one of these things, it's like that once that bottle's gone, there is no more. There's only that liquid that's in that bottle, and that's why the wee 10 centiliter miniature that comes with it is so that the owner can actually taste it without having to open the actual bottle. But it was an incredible project. It's one of these dream projects that you hear and you think, oh, I wish I could get a project like that. And I was just so lucky that it landed, and they said free reign to just do what you want with it, which was incredible.